Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. As I reported live on my broadcast on the 7th of July, as the letter was revealed on Trump's Truth Social post, South Africa has received a letter regarding the tariffs, and Trump has imposed a 30% tariff. Now, it leaves in question the whole situation that developed on Sunday, the 6th of July, when President Trump responded to the threatening statement from the BRICS conference in Brazil, saying that any country that supports BRICS policy would have an additional 10% tariff, no exceptions to be made. That implies that South Africa will receive an additional 10% tariff. However, that was not included in the letter. But the letter should be the biggest news in South Africa. You would think that something of this magnitude, your second largest trading partner, your most important trading partner, the one that gives you a trade surplus, the one that accepts your finished automobiles and produced goods to America with duty-free access until recently, you would think that jobs tied to exports to America would be important to South Africa's government. But alas, it's not. Not only has their response been muted and not conciliatory, but the media are almost completely ignoring the biggest story in South Africa today. It's shocking to say the least. In a statement on Monday night after the tariffs were announced, President Ramaphosa's office said that South Africa maintained that the 30% reciprocal tariff is not an accurate representation of available trade data. So the government of South Africa is going to mealy-mouth this and say that, well, it's not fair what they're doing. It's not a true representation of the tariffs. Well, that isn't going to change the situation. It isn't going to move the needle at all. And this is what they had specifically to say. This 30% tariff is based on a particular interpretation of the balance of trade between South Africa and the United States. This contested interpretation forms part of the issues under consideration by the negotiating teams from South Africa and the United States. What negotiating team? Who are they negotiating with? In our interpretation of the available trade data, the average tariff on imported goods entering South Africa stands at 7.6. Yes, but that doesn't include your quotas. That doesn't include the scams taking place at immigration and customs when things are brought into the country and how you defraud people while you let Temu and Shein send things in with no duty. Importantly, 56% of goods entering South Africa at 0% most favored nation tariff, with 77% of U.S. goods entering the South African market at under 0% duty, said presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya. But that's just a big nothing burger. That really doesn't matter. 77%? Okay, so we're not shipping nuclear power plants to South Africa. They can enter duty-free. We're not shipping aircraft carriers. They can enter duty-free. That's nonsense. Is that the actual volume or the dollar value of trade? Then that would matter. You can't say 77% of imports. Is it the volume or is it 77% of categories? That's not a useful statistic. And so the South African government is just doing what they typically do, denying reality, whistling past the cemetery. Meanwhile, South African media is devoid of this story. Almost no stories talk about this. There is one story in the Independent line talking about the impact to South Africa's auto industry, which is devastating. But beyond that, it's not even above the fold. So insignificant and unimportant. Now, why is South Africa's media? Ostensibly, these are news organizations responsible for reporting breaking news and reporting news that's happening around the world. This is the headline story in Japan, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in China, in Germany, France, everywhere in the world, except South Africa. Well, maybe not Iran. So why is that? Why is South Africa's media largely silent on this story? Why is it not the talking point? Because they're carrying the water of the government, which is remaining silent, hoping and praying for better weather. Well, the weather is not going to improve. Like the rain that sat over Kerr County, Texas, and the flood and deluge that came as a consequence, get ready for the high water mark. Come 1 August, it's highly unlikely, nay, impossible, that South Africa will negotiate any trade deal of any consequence or any benefit. Bear in mind for South Africans that at the beginning of this year, 2025, most of your goods and services came to America duty-free, giving you an artificial advantage, courtesy of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, over European BMW parts manufacturers, over wine from Europe, over products from around the world. Your stuff came into America largely duty-free. 1,800 goods and services under AGOA, plus another 6,000 under the general agreement. So most of your stuff came in the country duty-free. Then you were slapped with a 30% tariff, which was immediately reduced to just 10%. So since the 9th of April, it's been a 10% tariff. 0 to 10%. On August 1st, it's 30%, possibly 40%. South Africa cannot survive this. The devastation from lost jobs will be epic and irreversible. Those of you who think that China will buy those Ford Ranger pickup trucks, you're whistling past the cemetery. Those of you who think that Iran can make up for the lost agricultural exports to the United States, not going to happen. Those of you who think that Russia or Cuba or Venezuela are coming to your rescue, or Brazil or India, you're living in a fantasy world. This is unfortunate for South Africans. But your politicians have let you down. They've failed you. And you can rail and blame Trump all you want, but America has been taken for a ride for 50 years in trade deals that are contrary to our best interests. China is only the second largest economy in the world because the United States sponsored their entry into the World Trade Organization. And then they broke every rule: trademark infringement, copyright theft, industrial spying, quotas, limits, artificial barriers, physical barriers. Well, there's no humility in the South African political scene, that's for darn sure. And meanwhile, we have the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, in Parliament saying this is bad news. And he's right. But he seems to think that the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act can be saved. The Africa Growth and Opportunity Act is gone, folks. It's gone. It expires on 30 September. There is no effort to push the bill that Chris Coons introduced a year and a half ago in Congress to become law. And without a push or a sponsor, it will not become law. And it's also highly unlikely that a bill proposed by a Democrat a year ago giving South Africa preferential, or giving Africa preferential trade when we have this whole reciprocal tariffs things going on, it just isn't going to happen. Anybody who's talking about AGOA is out of touch with reality. They really are. AGOA is gone. It's not coming back. And South African media are ignoring the 30% tariff. South Africans will wake up to joblessness, hunger, and destitution, while the elites continue to live in their gated communities in Sandton, in Cape Town, their blue light escorts, their comfy jobs, their rich medical schemes, while you South Africans in Khayelitsha, Guguletu, Alexandria suffer, and just average everyday South Africans everywhere. What say you folks? Good luck.